Paper Crafter's Library. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this The Sky's the Limit card featuring the Blue Skies stamp and coordinating die from Lawn Fawn. So the stamp set I'm going to be using is Lawn Fawn's Blue Skies stamp set, and I'm going to be using both the hot air balloons. Now what I want to do is I want to paper piece the balloon portion of each of these images, and I'm going to be doing that from the Pink Lemonade Petite paper pack. Now the largest balloon, so for each balloon I'm going to have two different patterns of paper. So this is going to be one. You can see here there's a lot of really pretty patterns in this pack. This is going to be another one. So I'm going to use this one for these two for the smallest balloon. And then the largest balloon, I'm going to be using this one and this one. But you see there's a lot of different really pretty patterns to choose from in this paper pack. So what we need to do with paper piecing is we need to stamp each balloon onto the pattern paper. So I'm going to be using my Seek & Echo Tuxedo Black Memento ink. So I'm just inking that up. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to use my Ranger Jet Black. I think that ink pad is drying out a little bit, so I have to refill it. So I'm just going to use my Ranger ink pad here, and I'm going to stamp this once onto this piece of pattern paper here. I only need the balloon portion, I don't need the base, so I'm only stamping the top balloon portion. So there you can see what that one looks like. And then I'm going to stamp it a second time on this piece of pattern paper, but I think what I want is for the stripes to be going this way. So I'm going to make sure that my paper is oriented in that direction when I stamp my image here. Making sure my paper is straight. I'm going to go ahead and stamp. So you can see I have both my large balloon images, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing, same process with my smaller balloon, and then once I've done that I will be back. So here you can see what this looks like. So our next step now is to cut out the pieces. Now paper piecing is a really fun technique to use if you don't like coloring, or you don't feel like you're good at coloring, or you don't want to take the time to color, especially because a balloon is a fairly large image. So whenever I have large images and I don't really feel like pulling out my Copic markers, then I will use paper piecing. So what I want to do is when I reassemble this balloon, I want this large segment, center segment, and the two outside to be out of the stripe pattern, and then these two I want out of this pattern. So basically what you need to do is simply cut out the pieces that you want. And I'm not cutting on the line itself, I'm cutting just to the outside of the line, as close to the edge as I can get. So for simplicity's sake, because I want the outer edges of the balloon, I think what I'm going to do is instead of, for the balloon color, or for the pattern that has the most pieces, which is this pattern here, I'm going to cut out the entire balloon, and then I'm only actually going to cut these two little sections and then the base out of the other yellow pattern. So what that does is that gives you a base to stick your pieces to, and it makes it easier to assemble, and of course less cutting for you to do. Now definitely with a technique that like paper piecing, you do have to be comfortable with your scissors and not mind cutting, because there is a lot of cutting involved. So that's going to be the piece onto which I'm going to stick the other pieces. So now for this piece here, I'm going to need this balloon, or this bottom piece. And I think actually, just to keep my lines intact, instead of cutting the whole thing apart, I'm going to cut them together as one piece, because that's actually going to make it easier. That's going to make it easier to assemble too. I actually just thought of this now. I was originally, when I was planning out this card or thinking about it, I thought that I was going to have to cut everything out all in one piece, and then all of a sudden as I sat here cutting, it just hit me. Well, I don't actually have to cut everything out. I can simply cut what I need. So And that way, it's a little bit easier to keep the lines intact. Of course, there's less cutting, and you have to fiddle less when you're trying to glue everything together. So here you can see, this actually kind of looks like a light bulb, doesn't it? Does that look like a light bulb? You could hand draw the filament or whatever that thing's called in the inside. Okay, so there you can see there. So now what we just have to do is very carefully cut away that center portion. Come down all the way to the top of there. And again, I do want to preserve some of that black line. Now with this one, because it's going to be layered on top of the other piece and some of that black line is going to be there, if you were to cut on the black line here, it wouldn't be absolutely critical because you would still see part of it from the piece below. Okay, so here you can see cutting all the way. We're almost done this one. My hands are feeling very shaky this morning. I have a new personal trainer, and he works me really hard, and we did upper body today. So I feel like I can barely use my hands. Okay, so here you can see what this looks like, and I'm going to stick that over like that. So you see how easy that is to paper piece your balloon. Now, when I'm paper piecing, usually what I like to do is to use my liquid glue. And the glue that I use most often is my Tombow Mono Multi-Liquid Glue, except that I just realized that I lent it to my son. I lent it to my son for his school project, and he apparently never got it back to me. So I'm just going to grab this glue that I have on hand, which is my Alene Super Thick Tacky Glue. It's a little bit of glue overkill. Like my Tombow Mono would have been more than fine. This is my heavy duty glue. Look at that, my hands aren't even strong enough to squeeze it out today. Or open it for that matter. Okay, I have to go find a glue that I can actually squeeze, so I will be back. Okay, I found my glue. Thankfully, the last one I have, so I'm going to have to go out and buy some more. So I'm applying my glue to this piece here. If you have tweezers, it's very handy. It just makes it a little bit easier to hold and manipulate this piece. Less likelihood that you're going to get glue smeared all over your hands. It's one of the downsides to working with liquid glue is that it can get a little bit messy, much messier than a dry glue. And then I'm just going to stick that on. So there you can see what that looks like. We have one of our balloons assembled. You can see how pretty that looks, and because you've paper pieced directly on top, it also gives it a little bit of dimension. So I'm going to do the exact same thing now with a small balloon, and because it's the same process, I'm not going to make you watch me, and then I will be back once that's done. So here you can see I've now assembled both of my balloons. I'm going to set those aside, and I have here the coordinating dies for the Blue Skies stamp set. You can see it comes all in one piece, kind of connected by these little pieces in between, and you can kind of snap those little pieces off. You can do it by twisting, but if you have like a pair of wire cutters or something, you can do that, because I don't want this inner portion here. I just want the balloon. Now, if you want, so you don't have to have a whole bunch of individual little dies, you can actually keep them connected. It just means that you're going to end up die cutting other pieces as well. Now in this case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my balloon connected to my clouds, but I'm going to take off these other pieces here, like so. And I'm going to leave this because I actually do want a couple clouds cut out. So I'm going to lay this onto a piece of Paper Tray Ink Stampers Select white cardstock. I'm going to use a little bit of my matte removable tape from Scotch to just hold it in place. And then I'm going to be die cutting this using my Spellbinders Artisan Explorer. My Artisan Explorer has become my go-to machine simply because it's so tiny and compact and it works for just about everything. So I've got my cutting plate, my cardstock, my dies with the cutting side down, and then my base plate on top, and I'm going to run this through my little Artisan Explorer, and then I will be back. So here you can see what my pieces look like. Now I'm going to take my Dotto adhesive and I'm going to stick this onto my grid paper, and I'm going to take my stamp, ink it up, and then stamp it on top of that balloon, on top of my die cut balloon. So there you can see what that looks like. Now what I really wanted was those lines that you see over there. And the reason I did it on the die cut piece and not on my card base is because I'm planning on popping this piece up. So now you can take your balloon and I'm going to add my glue. And stick it to my die cut piece. So there you can see what that looks like. Now it looks like I got a little ink smear here, so we're going to have to put something on there to fix that. Now the basket, you can do one of two things. Initially I was thinking that I was going to color it, but I've kind of decided that I really don't want to color it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ink pad again and I'm going to ink up my basket piece and stamp it. Now normally if you were planning on doing that and you're going to do it out of the same color that you used for your other pieces, you could have simply stamped the whole balloon rather than just the top like I did before. But because I kind of changed my mind, I have to come back and stamp it again. But as you can see, this time I'm only stamping the balloon because really there's no sense wasting more pattern paper than you need to. So I just stamped it down there in the little corner in case you didn't see that. So I'm going to do that for the other one. So now I'm going to cut this out and then I'm going to stick it to the bottom of the basket and then I will be back. So you can see here I have my biggest balloon now, which has been completely assembled, and then I decided to go ahead and die cut the smallest balloon and then assemble the pieces on top in the same way because I kind of changed my mind about what I wanted to do for the background. As for the background, I decided to just pick a piece of blue pattern paper. Now the pattern paper I chose comes from the Lawn Fawn Petite Paper Pack. This is the Fa La La collection. You can see it has here a bunch of different patterns, and I was just basically looking for something that had some blue in it that I could use for the sky background. I would have liked something that had a little bit more of a smaller, not as obvious pattern, but when I held this up against this, it looked okay, so I decided to go with this one. Now this is cut 2 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and this is 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to center and stick my pattern paper piece to my cardstock, and this cardstock piece, it's a paper tray ink cardstock and it's the Aqua Mist, and as you can see the color coordinates perfectly with the Lawn Fawn pattern paper. Now my card is created out of Paper Tray Stamper Select White cardstock. It's a standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card. I simply took a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of cardstock, scored it at 5 1/2 inches, and folded it in half. So there you can see I now have that attached. So at this point in my card, usually what I do is start playing with the placement of my pieces. I went ahead and die cut a few more of the clouds, and I'm just going to put some dimensional foam at the back. I don't know exactly how many clouds I'm going to use. That's why I die cut a few more, because I just want to kind of interdisperse them a little bit. So I'm going to start with just, actually I don't want such a thick dimensional foam for that one there. Here I have my smaller foam squares. Oftentimes I use foam of different widths or thicknesses so that I can get different height in my elements. So for example, for my hot air balloon, I'm going to use, actually I think what I'm going to use is this Scotch 3D foam, simply because it's on a roll, so it makes it a lot easier, a lot faster and easier to apply than having to worry about peeling the back of all the individual little pieces. So you can see here right now I'm starting to try to build a little bit of depth. By having the larger balloon popped up, it makes it appear even that much closer to me, especially with the shadow it creates against the pattern paper. And then the little back one kind of looks more like it's off in the distance. And I may place this kind of like this. I'm not sure. I'm going to play with the arrangement a little bit and grab my sentiment as well. So I think I figured out an arrangement. I think this is how I'm going to place it. But first, before I do that, I'm going to stamp Sky's the Limit, because in that way, if I muck up the stamping of my sentiment, I really just have to peel off this pattern paper piece and replace it. I don't have to peel everything off. So usually I will stamp my sentiment before I start sticking everything down. Now the sentiment, the Sky's the Limit, comes from that exact same stamp set, the Blue Skies from Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to stamp this along the bottom of my pattern paper. And you can see it shows up really nicely there. Now my K did not stamp super well, so I'm going to have to grab a pen, but before I do it with a pen, I'm just going to sketch it in like so with a pencil. And that's an easy way to correct stamping mistakes. See, something like this, if I couldn't fix it with a pen, I'd pull it off and redo it, but in this case I think if I grab a pen I can fix that okay. And let's see if I have one here. It's a little bit thin, but we may be able to make it work. So I'm just doing it with short strokes, so less likelihood of... There you see, you can't even tell that we mucked up the sentiment. So now I'm ready to attach my pieces. So I'm going to stick this piece on. Remove this little cloud, stick that on after. Take the backing off of this. Let me stick that over here. Stick this down with my double-sided adhesive. Now this one, I want to tuck under my big one a little bit and have it overlapping my little balloon just a little bit. And then my largest cloud, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut it like this, remove my backings, and then align that cut edge with the edge of my patterned paper, like so. So there you can see what that looks like. So now the very last thing that I'm going to do with this card, you'll remember that I mentioned to you that I'd gotten somehow a little ink smear on the pattern paper, and to my eye anyways that's very obvious. So whenever I can, whenever I have mistakes like that, I will cover them up with something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tiniest rhinestone from my Kaiser Craft rhinestones. This is they're called silver, but they're actually clear. And then press that on top of that, and you can see it adds a teeny little bit of bling and it covers up your mistake. Now if one just seems kind of odd, you can always put one on the small one, and actually I think what I'm going to do is swap this out for the bigger one. And then that way you can see, looks like it was meant to be there. So there you can see what our card looks like, and we're now finished. If you enjoyed this video, you enjoy the way we teach, and would like to learn even more, we invite you to check out the Paper Crafters Library. Whether you're a beginner looking to learn the basics or an advanced paper crafter looking to learn new skills and techniques, you'll find it all here. Stamping, card making, scrapbooking, altered art, mixed media, we cover it all. With almost 2,000 videos currently in our library and videos added each month, we are the largest and most comprehensive online library of video tutorials for paper crafters on the internet. We invite you to visit our library and see what we're all about.